unexpectedly. So it's not every day you wake up and go, oh, I want to be an escrow officer. It doesn't really probably work that way. I don't know. Maybe it does, but it wasn't for me. So I kind of got transitioned into the situation. And while I call it a situation, it truly was, because it wasn't something I was ever interested in. I didn't know anything about title. Even as an agent, there's things you don't know. I remember being an agent and they would go, oh, have you reviewed your title commitment? What's that? What's a title commitment? And so they never spoke, title companies never spoke like an agent lingo. Like they never talked to me as if I was understanding their language, right? So for me, it was just starting to learn that as a title rep, I guess, or a title agent, an escrow officer. And I learned real quickly, like my staff, sometimes they'll say something about a title commitment. I'm like, if they're new, if they're in this business, they don't know what that is. So tell them what a title commitment is. What is title work? So I'm not here today to tell you all the things you don't understand. So I pretty much, I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to say it, but dumb it down. I don't want to say it like that, but that's how I felt as an agent. I'd be like, can you just, it's kind of like talking to attorneys. Can you just dumb it down for me a minute and let me understand what you're saying? So what I'm here today to do is just pretty much teach you the process from contract to close, from the time that you have an executed contract through the time that you close it, even post-closing. And I know Ann was on the last call talking about what that post-closing looks like, and how to keep those referrals going. But I'm really here just to tell you what happens all in between contract to close. So if you have questions, you're welcome to stop me. We can do a Q&A if you want to keep track of whatever it is you might have questions about at the end. Please feel free. So like I said, I may talk about things you already know, or I may talk about things that you don't know. So we're just going to take it from A to Z. So when you get a contract executed, I think the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that all parties have a copy of the contract. As an agent, I made the big mistake one time of trusting and relying on the buyer's agent to send something to their lender or send something to title. Never, ever, ever rely on another agent to do what you think they are going to do, because you never know. And you don't want to get a week to 2 weeks down the road and realize nothing's been sent to underwriting. Title doesn't know anything about it. Nothing's been opened. So the first 101 ever, just send the contract to everybody, even if you think the other agent has already done so. Just do it. It does not bother me as a title company or your lender if they're getting multiple contracts. It's okay. Just do it. It's very important. So never rely on anyone else to do your job. The second thing is, once we get that contract executed, we have this little gadget on our website on protitletx.com. It has a list of, this is not in color, of course, but it has every single resource. If you go to our resources page, guys, this is really, really cool. If you really want to know a little bit about how the contract to close kind of works, also gives us some other things like, hey, what's in a title commitment, that title work that we want to understand. And we're going to go over all this. But the first thing that does, once we open a title order, we first look at certain things. We go through the contract and we highlight those surveys. HOA is the resale cert to be ordered with an HOA. Payoff, we need to obtain the payoff. But I would start with the first things that the survey. Let's just start there. If there's a lender involved, 99.9% of the time, a survey is going to be required. So if you're listing a home and you get it under contract, or you're the buyer's agent, you're going to ask for the survey because that's part of the contract. I will tell you, as far as the survey goes, if you get a survey and you see that there is no seal or there's no signature from a surveyor, it's not a survey. It may look like a survey and it may look pretty and clean, but if their seal has been cut off, or there's not a signature from the surveyor, it is not acceptable to title. So in your survey section of the contract, it does talk about, if this survey is not acceptable to title, then there's a check mark box to check, either buyer or seller is going to pay for a new one. So just so you know, if you get a contract and you get a survey and it doesn't have a seal on it, that T47, it's almost like you never turned in a survey. So they may or may not require you to get another survey, and you may have to pay for it. Depends on how the contract was written. So just heads up on the surveys. I think it's very important that we look for that seal and that stamp. The next thing is HOAs. So, these are just highlights of the contract that I'm talking about right now. Is there HOA? Yes or no? As a seller's agent, if you are listing a house and you have an HOA, please let your sellers know that there is always 99.9% of the time, sure, there is going to be a resale cert that's going to need to be purchased. And a lot of the times they have no idea. I have seen resale certs in the 1200s. I've seen transfer fees of $4,000, like in Con Plantation and Granbury. You see them all the way across the board. It's very rare that we get an HOA that we have to order a resale cert that is minimal cost. It's usually at least a couple of $100. And if I have to rush an HOA resale cert, like today, I just closed one this morning right before I did this class, $800 to get this resale cert back in 5 days because it was a cash deal. We had to execute. We had to move quickly, right? So we had no choice. If it was going to close by the time she wanted it, we had to pay $800 for this resale cert. The resale cert is not a part of the contract. It is a part of the HOA resale addendum. Okay. And there's a place on there, and I'm not here today to teach contracts. So I let my attorneys do that, but I am here to kind of guide you through as to what happens behind the scenes. So what happens is we know that there's an HOA resale cert. Our team then, your escrow officer's team, they will go in and order that resale cert. It sends a link to the sellers. Sellers call me all the time and go, what? I didn't know there was $800. I didn't know I have to pay that much money, or I was $500 or $300. So you don't always know what that resale cert is, but just prepare your sellers. That is an outside expense that does not come out of closing. That's something that gets paid out before closing. So just be prepared for that. What is a resale cert? A resale cert is going to tell us everything about that HOA. If there are any past dues, so the seller did not pay their last quarter of dues, they're going to tell us that today to let me know that I need to collect it tomorrow for closing. Okay, so any past dues we got to collect. Any kind of transfer fees, we need to know that. We cannot close a deal without an HOA resale cert. Okay, so it's very important. We have that. So that's a little bit about the HOAs. From there, we move into the payoff. We need to get all that information from your sellers. So we send out a pre-closing, and it asks the sellers all their information. Now, we get kind of personal. We have to know their social security numbers, things like that, just simply because we have to have that information from the loan that you currently are paying to pay off your mortgage. So we ask for loan numbers. We ask for things like that, a lot of privy information. And as you know, as title, we have all been vetted, by all of our underwriters. Providence, we have lots of underwriters. Anne with TRG, she's on the call today. She's one of my favorites. I won't tell my other underwriters that, but I use TRG a lot. So they all vet us to make sure that, we are upstanding individuals, and so we get that personal information, and that's our due diligence to keep that privy and make sure that none of the information is shared. And of course, we all have very secured encrypted servers, so that's all taken care of in the security end of IT. So we are nosy, and we do ask a lot of questions, and sometimes I tell people all the time, I'm not being nosy, I'm being informative. So if I'm ever asking too much to my buyers or my sellers, I kind of just let them know that that's just my job, and that's just honestly what I have to do. Moving on from that, home warranties. Home warranties are obviously a pretty actually simple part of the contract, to the behind the scenes title world. We cannot just go, hey, we want you to use this company. We're not allowed to do that. We have to give options. We have to give people the chance to choose. So we send about 10 to 15 different home warranties out. Unless you're the buyer's agent and you say, nope, I want my person to have XYZ home warranty, then I have to use that home warranty. But by law, I have to give your buyers all option as to who they would like to choose. So that's a pretty simple part. Like I said, we order it, we pay that at closing. So that we close, their warranty's already started, and then we pay them the day out of closing. So moving on to once we open the order title. So you'll probably hear sometimes people talk in title about their plant, their examiners. Those are that's a job I could do, is salmon, go back to property records. I mean, going back 25 plus years and seeing all of that. And that is a lot of a lot of work, and you've got to be very driven to sit at the computer all day and cycle through files like that. So I really respect them. They do a lot of hard work for us. And so on the back end, when we open title, we send to our plant, also then verify your taxes, all going on the same time that we're talking about surveys and home warranties and payoffs and pre-closes for your buyers. And that back is your title commitment. And the ultimate goal here is making sure that we are transferring title clean, clear title, no clouds. There's no government entities that have any type of entitlement to the property. There's nothing in the past that could come up and say, whoa, wait a minute. We are trying to make sure that everything is clear and clean as it transfers. So that is our job, and that's why we issue title insurance, and that's where our underwriters come into place. So as far as that goes, like this little form is really cool. So if you go, like I said, to our website, it's protitletx.com. If you go to our website, it will break down the four sections of the title commitment, A, B, C, and D. Now, if you've ever gotten this title commitment and you're like, I don't even know what this is, I'm not really sure, I cannot tell you how important it is that you as agents, you're representing a party, to please be reviewing your title work. It is really important because we send it out. We have, by law, we have to send it out to all parties. So it's going to go out to you. It's going to go out to your buyers or to you and your sellers. But it's really important that you know what that stuff says. So when your seller calls you and goes, hey, there's a lien on my property and I'm not sure where that is, you could have already said, you know what, I've already reviewed it. This is what it is. Title's working on it, XYZ. But the four components to a title commitment on Schedule A is just the names, the legal description, what is included in Schedule A. So I challenge you all to, next time you get a title commitment from your title company, it's probably going to come with all the title work and it's have like 50 different attachments, but look for the title commitment and just read it. Challenge yourself to understand it because it's really interesting to see all the different components. So what is the name that's vested? When I say vested, who owned it previously, so whoever's selling it, that's the vesting name. It's going to have your complete description of your legal. We got to make sure that legal is correct and it matches the survey, and we have to double check and cross-reference everything. Schedule B, so we're talking about, that's the second part. Okay, so once we talk about legal description and who it's vested in, the Schedule B talks about any exceptions, any type of oil and gas mineral leases, any of those things. So restrictions, building lines, if there's anything in there, easements, say, the water company has an easement, we list that in there. So all of those important things are there. And that's what we compare to surveys and make sure that when our survey review team goes and reviews, they look to see that everything on Schedule B matches what is on survey currently. And there are times when we get, especially new build areas, there's a lot of new construction, things have changed, easements have been added over time. We may see that the survey does not match Schedule B and say that the survey doesn't have what Schedule B says it should have. At that time, sometimes depending on the situation, we may have to go back to the drawing board and get a new survey. And sometimes we just don't know that until we have title work. And that is kind of the challenging thing in title, is that sometimes you don't always know what you're into until you get that title work back. And so this is kind of paints the picture. It tells the story of the property. It gives us that great idea of, okay, where are we? Where has it been? And how do we need to get it to where it needs to be or where it's going? So excuse me, I'm going to get some water. So Schedule C. This is probably one of the most important things we look for. And this is where we tell what is on title. If there's any liens, do they own any property? I've seen child support liens come up. I've seen tax liens. I have seen all kinds of things. I've seen if I've probably seen it all really when it comes to schedule. That doesn't tell me their current, what they owe. They originally drew their deed. So when they originally purchased the property or last refinanced the property, it goes back that far. And then past that, like I said, any type of estate matters, anything that could be from a divorce, a death, things like that, we have to look at Schedule C, and we call that curative. We call that something that we've got to cure. We've got to fix it before we can go forward. And sometimes, be honest, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes there are things that just can't be fixed. I mean, there's things like divorce and death, and that really keep us from moving forward in the direction we need to go. But it's very rare that we honestly can't fix that. I mean, I have just a couple weeks ago, I drove to North Richland Hills to find an estranged daughter. The dad had died. The stepmom has never spoken to her but once or twice in her whole life. And I was kind of put in an uncomfortable situation, but it all worked out. But, those things happen. Luckily, that was something that could be avoided and it could be fixed. So very grateful for that. And then Schedule D is who to contact and what is being charged. So pretty much has, like for us, it has all of our board members and things like that. So Schedule D is important, but not nearly as important as the first three schedules of the title commitment. That's for you to be concerned about. So a couple of things like legal descriptions. If you understand like a survey for a legal description, we have to make sure that legal description matches a survey. Example, I had a survey yesterday for 1.37 acres. My legal description talked about 51 acres. At one time, that 1.3 had been separated from the 51 acres, but they've lost the legal description. The surveyor is now dead. Like, he's not in business anymore. So the person that took that 1.37 acres and separated it from the 51, I have no choice now, but we have to get a new survey. So just an example of something like that. Clouds on title. I've had some different situations with homesteads in the state of Texas. There are certain types of things that can be exempted from your homestead or exempt from your homestead. In that case, we would get something called a partial release. So let's just say that you owe American Express a debt of $10,000. You never paid your credit card bill. They then put a judgment against you. And now when you go to sell your homestead, that comes up. Well, we have to verify the debt through our Schedule C, which again, if it's filed with the county, it's going to come up on our Schedule C. And once we see that, then we have to contact the debtor and let them know that you are, we need a partial release. They're nosy. They're going to want to know why. We have to then prove that you're selling your homestead. We have to prove that this is your homestead and not a second home or an investment home, things like that. And in that case, we have to kind of get them to sign us a kind of, sometimes it's hard because people don't understand the laws. In the state of Texas, your homestead is protected. So now if that same person was selling, say, their Galveston vacation home, no, that's not exempt. They'll have to pay that debt out of their net proceeds. Is a homestead, if we can, that's a homestead, we fight for a partial release for our client and we get that taken care of. So when I'm saying a partial release, it means it doesn't release them completely from the debt. It just releases their homestead, that one piece from the debt, if that makes sense. Names vested, it's very important. We a lot of times names that, this is a big one, so I hope y'all pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, because this is probably one of the most things that can really throw a deal off is death. And divorce is one thing, death is a whole nother ballgame, okay? Let's just say, for example, you go to list someone's property, okay? And you go in and Mrs. Smith tells you that her husband's dead and he's been dead for 5 years, just say for example. So Mrs. Smith tells you that someone's dead. The first thing you need to ask for is, was there a will? Write this down. I promise you, if you're going to sell real estate in your life to come, you will always at one point run across somebody that has a death in this estate. Ask for the will. If they say, I don't think they had a will, okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. But if they do have a will, make sure you get the will. I've had somebody tell me recently, I didn't feel like it was my business to ask for the will. And I'm like, well, you are representing them. It is your business. You're looking out for their best interest, right? You're representing that seller. Ask for the will. It's okay. You can be nosy. You need to know that, because I'm going to be nosy and I'm going to ask those questions. So getting that information from them. It's very important. So if they don't have a will or they do have a will, doesn't matter, and it's not probated, say they have a will and they never went to probate court, then the next step is something we have to do, and it's called an affidavit of heirship. Affidavit of heirships are probably one of the most frustrating things that I have to deal with in this business. And I promise you it's the same for you, especially when you understand the process. So if there is no will, affidavit of heirship has to be done regardless. And I'm going to tell you what that is in just a second. If there's a will and it still was not probated, even if they have a will and they did not probate it with the court, then we still have to do an affidavit of heirship. An affidavit of heirship is actually taking the person that's deceased and identifying their heirs. So let's say they have 2 kids. Mrs. Smith that wants to list her house, her husband died 5 years ago. They have 2 kids and they both have these kids together. Okay, he has a will, but he didn't probate the will. But in the will, it says wife gets everything when I die. Well, that makes it a little bit easier because these 2 children were both within the same marriage. Not a big deal. I mean, our attorneys review it. An affidavit of heirship, we identify the heirs, and then we have to have 2 disinterested parties that have known the deceased at least 10 years prior to death. Not 10 years total, but prior to death. If he died in 2005, they have had to have known him since 1995. Okay, not since 2000. Oh, it's been 10 years since then. Has to be before death. And like I said, affidavit of heirships are probably the most frustrating for myself and my team, just simply because that is very complicated. Because then you start having to get family involved. You've got to go dig out history. You've got to go find down 2 non-interested parties. And if these people died and they were 98 when they died, try finding people that knew them when they, before 10 years before they died, when they were 98. Deal with it all the time. So these are just really important questions. Ask if there's a will. If so, has the will been probated? If not, prepare them that there are more documents the title's going to need to be able to clear title. And I promise you, nothing's closing unless we can identify either the probate or an affidavit of heirship is completed. So, like I said, I think that's probably the most frustrating in title is the dead people part. And divorces. If someone's divorced and you go list Mrs. Smith's house and she tells you that she's divorced and you're going to need that divorce decree. Okay, at least title is going to have to ask for it. And you sure make title. I promise you, if you ask for these things and you know the correct things to ask up front, it makes your process with title from contract to close so much easier. Because if we have to keep hunting things down, trust me, I will never. I know my escrow team. I'm an escrow officer, but we have 30 offices in Texas. And I am very proud to say that I work for Providence, okay? There's a lot of title companies out there people have to choose from, a lot. Just in my area in Johnson County that I'm in, I think we've got 9 or 10 title companies. It's crazy. There's lots to pick from. But what I can tell you about Providence is that we work very, very hard for our clients. We have great communication. That's part of the values that's instilled in us from our ownership down. But I'm very prideful to say that, we're not going to make you do our jobs. Okay. If we need a will, if we need a divorce decree, trust me, we're going to try to do it on our own. But if you come to us with those things, oh my gosh, it just makes things so much easier. So if you can ask those things up front, great. If they don't want to give those to you and they don't feel comfortable, that's fine too. We don't mind. Like I said, we'll have to ask for it either way. So divorce decrees, that's all been done, and the title work has been reviewed by the examiner. At that time, we get the title work and it all over to the lender. The lender then takes our title work, if there is a lender. If there's not, it makes it a little more simple and not as complicated. But if there is a lender, we send that over to them, and then they take everything, and then that goes to their underwriters. And then they start breaking things down A to Z, just like what we just did. They go and make sure, they kind of double check us. They make sure that, hey, everything is good. There's no issues that they see. They look at the survey. They want to talk about any exceptions to the survey. They'll look at minerals, that kind of thing. So talking about minerals real quick, another thing that I think is important for y'all to know. As title companies, we do not research minerals, okay? I get questions all the time like, hey, can you tell if how much of these minerals these sellers own? No, I can't. Because it's a lot of work. I always recommend if it's something that's that important to you or your sellers or your buyers, hire a landman. about $500, and they could probably track it all down for you. But the problem is that back in 1950, Mrs. Smith, she when she moved and she transferred ownership, she only retained 50% of her minerals. Well, then the next owners, they sold and they only conveyed 10%. Well, that was only 10% of the 50% the previous person owns. So if you can tell, it can kind of get convoluted, and you don't know where the kind of flow chart starts, or kind of how they convey, or what's the percentage for every time. So it's a lot of work. So no, we don't research that. It is easy, so I can't tell if you own them or not, unless it is easy for me to go back and look at Schedule B. Again, this is important for your title commitment. On Schedule B, I can go back and I can see if there are any oil and gas leases. If there are, they'll tell me who they're registered to, and that would tell me. I've had people before not even realize it. Like, they're like, oh, we didn't even know. Well, you clearly have them because you have oil and gas leases in there. So that's helpful. So those are all just kind of tidbit of things that goes on throughout the title process. Cash for their lenders have something called a closing disclosure. Has to be, and this is all lending side, of course, but has to be disclosed 3 days prior to closing for TRID, the TRID laws. If you're a cash buyer, you do a HUD. HUDs are super easy. When I started real estate, that was all it was HUDs. And it took me forever to learn closing disclosures. It seemed like when I got into escrow. And then now I do so many CDs that it's hard for me to read a HUD even, I have to like kind of refocus and reset my mindset to understand a HUD versus a CD even today. I mean, once I get it, it's pretty simple, but just so you know, those are the differences. If you have a cash buyer, you're asking the title company for a HUD. If you have a lender, you're asking for the CD. Either way, we know what you're talking about. The other things I would probably say, it's very important, commission CDAs. As far as title goes, it's those naggy Nancys and bug you to death. But it's really important, and you don't like it when you're commissioned wrong. Okay, so as soon as you can get those, and even if you can't get me the CD, the CDA right away, if you can just tell us what those commissions, what those percentages are right off the bat, that makes it pretty easy whenever you're sending something over for title to be opened. So that way we kind of know where we stand on all of that. So I think I probably went really fast because I thought we started late and I was trying to keep everybody on time. So my apologies. So if you want, we could go ahead and open it up to Q&A, because you probably have some questions that I forgot to address. So if y'all have anything, feel free. No questions? Okay, so
well.
Yeah, like I said, I probably went much quicker than probably, just because I thought I want to respect everyone's time. That's important to me. So I will just tell you this real fast. Title in itself is very confusing. And like I said, I always say, I don't know how I wound up here, but I did. And I really, really enjoy it. Like, I love it. People ask me all the time, do you want to go back to selling real estate? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Like, sometimes I do. And then I forget that I don't know that I have any friends anymore that aren't in real estate. So I just lived through that. So I had drinks with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and she's not in real estate. And I was like, this is weird. Like, what do we talk about? Because all I know to talk about is real estate. So no, I'm really kidding. I mean, I do have friends outside of real estate, but it's one of those things that's just kind of what it is, and I really enjoy it, and I enjoy not having to drive people around on weekends. No offense, I know that's what y'all do, or drive and go show houses and things like that. I love getting the calls, and I get calls on weekends too. I work on the weekends, but I don't have to go and show homes on weekends. So I think I like it now. But
hey, Dana,
I do
have a question.
Sure.
What's the website for the spreadsheet again? The ABCD title?
Oh yeah. It's www.protitletx.com. It's just our company website. You look at the right-hand corner, and it says resources. I don't think we utilize our resources page very often. I'm gonna go look at it real quick so I can tell you real fast what I'm talking about. But if you look at the resources, we have all of our stuff and it's always constantly updated. Like for example, buyer's checklist, contract to closing. You know, before I would probably hand a lot of these things out. Like sometimes I go through and give my clients the things that they might need. But since COVID's happened, I mean, we really haven't been getting out as much as we used to, right? So this is a great resource. If you have a color printer, you can print them. If you want to send them to FedEx or Kinko's, do that, or your broker's office. But you could print, you know, things you need. There's things that you can put in your folders for buyer's checklist, seller's checklist, contract to close, planning a smooth move. If you go and look at our website, it'll show you all those under resources. So feel free to use those anytime. If you want us to print them for you, holler at us. We'll be happy to print those. Get with Sharon or me, whomever, and we'll be happy to print all that. Is the Kat around? I mean, did I miss anything? Anne's on the call too. Maybe she could tell me if I missed something.
Yeah, no, Kat.
I never took this class, by the way. I was so nervous. Like I teach all the time, and I love teaching. But this is so not my element. Like I like being up and walking around and talking and like doing things. So this was kind of, I was very nervous. I think I had a nightmare last night about it, to tell you the truth. I thought that I missed it or something. I don't know. Anyhow, so anybody got anything?
Hey, I did.
What you got?
Hey, so I was struggling with my mouse button, by the way. That's why I couldn't get to the unmute.
That's okay.
Hey, back to HOAs.
Uh-huh.
So we sell certs. Who did you say paid for that? Because it doesn't come out of closing.
No, it doesn't. The seller typically pays for that unless it's addressed on the HOA addendum.
Okay.
Now, there is a small portion at the HOA addendum that talks about that, who pays for that. A lot of times it gets left off for a seller. The seller normally always pays for it. I mean, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've seen a buyer pay for a resale cert ever. So I would probably say those are the most important things, and it can hold up a closing really, really quickly if we don't have that HOA documents. And so if I don't order a HOA on time, it's happened. I'm not gonna lie. I am not one to say I don't make mistakes, because I will admit them all day long. There has been times when I'm like, crap, we didn't get that HOA ordered in time because either A, the sellers didn't pay for it whenever we sent the link, or B, we didn't get it in time, or C, I just dropped the ball somehow. And that, like I said, hasn't happened very often in my time, but I've had to pay out of my own pocket for rushes, you know, over time. I mean, it just happens like that. But it's very, very rare that's ever happened. But it's very, though, important that as soon as we order that resale cert and your seller gets that link in their email, that they really need to pay that ASAP, because every day that they don't pay that drags on. And trust me, if you want a 20-day close or a 21-day close, which happens quite a bit, and these HOAs, they don't get in any hurry. I want you to know that. They do not care when you have to close. So, you know, the HOA will say, oh, it's going to be, it's a 10-day turnaround, you know. When I say 10-day, it's 10 business days, not weekends included. So if you got a 20-day close, that you may be really putting it close. So that's sometimes you may have to order a rush. So just to kind of, every circumstance is a little bit different, but encourage your sellers to make sure they pay that HOA as soon as they receive the link from us. So, and also whenever you're sending in the contracts, guys, it doesn't, any title company, any of them, guys, when I tell you 100 hands touch these files, there are literally more than 100 hands that touch your files, especially when there's a lender involved. And I will tell you, from a escrow perspective, I'm going to close 40 deals this month. Think about it. That means that my team, I have 40 buyers, 40 sellers, 40 buyer's agents, 40 listing agents, 40 lenders. Do you see how many people I'm working with? I need help, like communication wise. We're going to give the best communication. And this isn't just me. This is any escrow officer you work with across the board, any title company. If you're turning in a contract for a buyer or seller, I know you don't want to put their information on the contract. I was an agent. I don't want no buyer contacting my sellers. No, ain't gonna happen. So do not put that on the contract. Okay. I'm totally in agreement with you. I don't want you to do that either. But what you can do is in that email, when you send that contract over, put your buyers and sellers contact information in there, their phone number, their emails. I'll tell you, my team is pretty respective of that. Like I know Sharon's group is too. Like we are good about like making sure you're good with us talking and communicating with your people. I'm not going to talk privy information with your seller if there's a lien until I know you know about it, you know, that kind of thing. So that's just kind of a respect thing that I'm very big about. But if you can help us on that, that, like I said, surely helps our escrow teams out tremendously when we got that many closing. If you can just help us without having to track that information down, makes a world of difference. So any other questions?
So this may be a little silly.
No, nothing silly.
In minerals, you mentioned the landman. How do we find these landmen? I always hear about landmen or women or aliens.
You know, a lot of oil and gas companies, you could reach out to them. I don't know any landmans personally. I mean, I know somebody that actually, they do surveying for oil and gas leases and stuff. And I would probably reach out to them and I could probably find contacts that way. But, I mean, I know somebody that did it. They just called Chesapeake. I don't know if Chesapeake's still around, but Chesapeake, they were able to hunt down a landman. Like I said, people ask these questions a lot. I don't know that minerals are that important to anyone anymore as they used to be, and they may be important again one day. We don't know what's going to happen, of course. But I personally have not had many people really go and pay for a landman. Maybe one or two.
I didn't know if there was like a special website for, www.landman.com.
I mean, that's literally what they're called. I mean, you could probably Google landman and wherever you're at, so it'd be pretty simple that way. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you. I think that's all I got.
Cool. Anybody else? Well, yay, my first Zoom class. Sorry if I was awful.
No, you're amazing. It's a lot of detail.
Thank you. Well, y'all know if y'all ever have any questions, Sharon and I will get you whatever you need. We'll get you in the right position with the right person, and they'll get you where you need to be.
We'll blow up your phone and your messenger.
Yeah, there you go. That works too. All right. Well, cool. Sharon?
Thank you, Dania. I appreciate it. Anybody else
Thank
have
you.
anything? I guess I can unmute everybody. Unmute. Sparkles, are you around? She had little babies, so she might be doing baby duty.
Baby's cute.
Well, thank you so much, Dania. If y'all have any questions, if y'all need any flyers or any additional information, just let me know. Happy to help you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Y'all have a good rest of your week.
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
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 Welcome.